What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back on the video. Week 1 almost in the books. We have one more game tonight. Should be a really fun game to watch, but only one more game, and then we're on to week 2. Every Monday afternoon, we're going to do this video, talk about the upcoming waiver wire, talk about the players we should be adding, putting claims in for, things like that. So let's start off with I would say a semi-surprise rookie performance, and that's Puka Nacua. And I say semi-surprise because it's not a surprise that he was the top receiver for the Rams. He was someone we talked about drafting late in best ball, being someone that, we thought had upside this season. The surprise came that, I thought that maybe he would lead the team in targets with like 6 or 7, and that, maybe at some point with a healthy Cooper Kupp, he could be like the wide receiver 2 on the team. Like at some point, ends week 1, leading the league with 15 targets, was second with a 41% target share, top 5 in expected fantasy points. I mean, given any model, some people have it at 2, but any model, top 5. So it wasn't just that he got lucky. He was seeing significant high upside volume, was 8th in air yards. Like, those are wide receiver 1 numbers. Now, he's not going to be a wide receiver 1 this season, or at least very unlikely to be, since obviously when Cooper Kupp comes back, those numbers are going to come crashing down. But the earliest Kupp can return is week 5. There's no guarantee that that's going to happen. It could be pushed to week 6, week 7, week 8. Let's be honest. He could suffer another re-injury, could miss the whole season. Like, we don't know what's going to happen. So because there's a bunch of range of outcomes there, the point is he's going to have a really good role, Puka here. He's going to have a really good role for the next few weeks. And then who knows after that. But at a baseline, he needs to be rostered. Brutal matchup, unfortunately, next week. They play the 49ers. I think we saw, a Steelers offense this week that is going to be good. The Steelers are going to be good this season. Going to have a lot of really good games. Just gets completely shut down by the 49ers. 49ers, Cowboys, 2 defenses we're just not going to be want to targeting in fantasy. So that's not fantastic. But Puka needs to be rostered. He should probably be the top wide receiver on free agency, unless you're in a super small league where there's ridiculous names. He's the one to go after. Same kind of story around Tutu Atwell. Personally, I would much rather go after Puka, not just because he had so many more targets, so much more usage. Tutu's just not a player that I personally believe in long term. I could see in a game where they're not throwing the ball as much, him easily dropping down to 2 or 3 targets. When Kupp comes back, I could see him having just, a very small role on this team. And even before Kupp comes back, I don't think that was probably one of his better performances he's going to have. I don't personally believe in the talent. If you do go after him, and I think he's totally fine. If you want to put a claim in for Puka, you don't get that. Have a second claim in there for Tutu Atwell. I think that's a totally fine way to approach it. But yeah, he's not someone I'm super excited to get, and I definitely don't think I'd be playing him against 49ers next week. We'll see where Puka kind of gets in the rankings. I do want to break down the Patriots wide receiver room pretty quickly. We had Kendrick Bourne ran 54 routes. Kayshon Boutte ran 43. Juju 27. Demario Douglas 27 as well. And that was with Devonta Parker out. All of those likely come down. Honestly, most weeks because they threw the ball so many times. But percentage-wise also come down when Parker is back. Bourne did look by far the best among the wide receivers for the Patriots. His playing time is unlikely to change significantly when Parker returns, but we've seen in the past that Bourne will play well and then the Patriots just don't feel like using him. You got to think, though, again, he looked way better than everyone else on that roster, so you got to think he's getting snaps. But also remember, this is a Patriots offense that does not want to throw the ball 54 times. It was 3 more pass attempts Mac Jones had than any other game in his career. They're not going to throw the ball over 50 times a game. Teams don't do that, especially not the Patriots. But again, Bourne looked good. New England has a very difficult schedule, hardest schedule in the NFL. So, they don't want to throw the ball that much, but they're going to be losing most weeks at some point, not winning by a ton in second halves very many times. And so they're going to have to throw the ball a decent amount. So I would consider Bourne in 12-team leagues. I feel like in 8 and 10-team leagues, maybe you don't need to go there. But if you're in a 12-team league, I'd say it's unlikely that your last wide receiver spot is better than a shot on Kendrick Bourne, because we don't really know. But if he's going to be their best wide receiver, if he's going to be the most used, have really good usage, downfield usage, had a lot of air yards this week, what I would do is I'd put a claim in for Puka, then I'd put one in for Bourne, and then I'd put one in for Tutu. That's probably how I'd approach this week, since all three are pretty unlikely to be rostered. We're going to close the video with two players. I can just mention them now, Allgeier and Nico Collins, that I'm pretty sure rostered in most leagues, but I would say, okay, Nico maybe number one, but Puka and Nico probably very, very close. We'll see how that sorts itself out. I'm going to have the exact rankings on the website, ordered from like best to worst for the waiver claims, how much you'd put in Fab. But I would say like Nico and Puka should be at the top there, then Kendrick Bourne, then Tutu Atwell. That's how I'd approach that. And then if you wanted to, in like 12 team leagues and on, go after Allen Robinson. I don't know the extent of the Diontae Johnson injury right now. I think we'll find that out this week. But Allen Robinson, decent amount of targets, especially if you're in like a full PPR league and kind of get those short area targets there. If Diontae Johnson's going to miss time, Allen Robinson, who was already seeing a decent amount of targets, is going to see a significant amount more. But I would say like with a healthy Pickens, a healthy Diontae, Allen Robinson won't be that amazing. But like Pat Freiermuth got hurt, Diontae got hurt, and so there's a potential here in the short term. Allen Robinson's kind of a little bit of a target hog, and so keep track of that. Again, not really someone you probably need to go after in 8 or 10 team leagues. Switching to running back, the number one overall claim, so I would say even ahead of the wide receivers this week, is Kyren Williams, in my opinion. I do want to say that Sean McVay has duped us before. He's given significant usage to running backs, and especially with this Cam Akers situation, he's given no usage to Akers, and then a bunch of usage, and then no usage. Like he kind of goes back and forth these decisions. But it seems like Kyren's, I don't want to say the guy, but he's got a stronger workload. He was used fewer for like, if you look at overall touches. So if you only look at the box score, yes, Akers had more touches, but Kyren outsnapped Akers 53-28. He ran 29 pass routes to Akers 4. Again, Akers had 22 carries on 28 snaps. So when he was on the field, he was being used. Number one, Rams aren't going to win that many games this season, and it was a positive game script. Number two, 22 carries, 29 yards. Embarrassing, like horrific production from Cam Akers. So it's not like he got those 22 touches and they're like, yeah, I got to keep doing that. It was 29 total yards. It's not like Kyren was great, honestly, but at least he gained 52 yards on his 15 carries. He did score 2 touchdowns to Akers 1. Kyren was someone I personally wish I was higher on earlier in the process. In the last, honestly, probably only 2 weeks of the summer, we got that athletic report that was indicating that, as we talked about in videos, like Kyren was going to get some early down usage. He was going to be that third down back. And so we were like, well, if they're going to lose a lot of games, like maybe Kyren's even the one you want over Cam Akers. And Akers was going significantly earlier. So we started taking him in round like 17, 18 of underdog. Wish that report had come out earlier. Wish we'd had started that a little bit earlier, because I don't think many people got him in redraft leagues. But regardless, we know at this point, it seems like it was legit. If we had that report in the summer, then we see it. Even in a positive game script, one that's like, well, actually, that should have been a Cam Akers game. Akers just didn't play very well. Kyren looked better. Kyren, in my opinion, is the top waiver ad. Again, I'll have on the website exactly how much fab you should be spending on him. But yeah, I think he's worth like the number one claim. Especially like maybe not the number one claim if, let's say you went running back heavy. Let's say you hit. I have a league that showed you guys I started off Eckler and Pollard, right? I'm obviously not starting Kyren over those two, but even having invested heavily in them, it's not like all of my running backs are going to work out, all of my bench players are going to work out. I have to look back at that team. I don't exactly remember who I have, but I can guarantee you there's someone on my bench that didn't perform that well, that it's worth just throwing them in there. But if you happen to draft like 5 running backs that you love, you don't want to get rid of any of them, and you don't want to spend number one claim on Kyren Williams, sure, I just think getting a running back that has a good workload, even on a bad team, is worth it. So I wouldn't save it. I would just use them. Next up is talking about the Baltimore running back, someone I actually think a lot of people will use the number one claim on, and I would not personally. So we had Dobbins dominate the snaps before his injury. He played 79% of the offensive snaps. He likely would have had 2, maybe 3 touchdowns this week had he not gotten injured. But then he tears his Achilles. I'm not going to say his career's over, but let's be honest. He had a significant injury where he tore his ACL, plus other stuff went wrong with his knee. Comes back and tears his Achilles, kind of back to back. And so going to be tough for him to break out at this point. Really unfortunate. And it's why he was holding out, why he wanted to try and get the money, because it's such a dangerous position. You can just be done at any point. He goes down. Hill was kind of getting usage before he goes down. After he goes down, Gus and Hill kind of rotate in and out. It's Hill that scores 2 touchdowns, but it was just that, right? He had 8 carries for 22 yards. Justice Hill did not command a single target. That can kind of be due to a number of reasons. We had Dobbins go down, and then Baltimore was just up the whole game. It was a matchup that kind of favored them running the ball. So even though they're going to throw the ball more this season, Houston is a matchup where you don't really want to throw the ball. They have a pretty good pass defense. You want to be running it. So they're kind of a run funnel, and so we didn't see as many targets. Maybe those targets do get elevated because obviously Gus isn't commanding any. So maybe Justice Hill does get a few targets each week. Something you want to look at. My opinion is maybe they go after Kareem Hunt. Maybe they go after Leonard Fournette. Those guys are still out there. I wouldn't be shocked to see them, at least bring them in for like a practice, do something there. I wouldn't be shocked to see them elevate Melvin Gordon. Like, there's a number of things they could do to where it's like, if you're actually going to spend number 1 claim, unlike Gus or Justice Hill, there's a lot of ways that could go wrong. And honestly, very few ways it can go like extremely right, because I don't think they're going to feature anyone. They were featuring Dobbins, but now they don't have someone that's that good. So I wouldn't personally. I think he's worth putting a little bit of fab, both Gus and Hill. But I think the amount that I'm going to recommend, people will get beaten by. So probably not someone that I'm really going after. Next up, Zack Moss, who I would prefer over those other two, which I don't think a lot of people would. Deion Jackson looked bad this week. Then Evan Hull got injured, and Jake Funk is never going to be the answer. So Moss, who was close to returning this week, could be back next week, but at the very least, will be back very soon. He was rumored to be the number 1 before getting injured, or at least like, the primary backup to Jonathan Taylor, who's obviously not able to play right now. And so I think when Zack Moss comes back, and again, we don't know exactly what this room's going to look like long term, but if Moss comes back this week, we've still got a 3-week stretch where we're not going to see Jonathan Taylor, and very high potential that long-term Taylor isn't on this team, isn't playing in week 5. And so we could get a lot of weeks where Moss is seeing a significant snap share, is getting a lot of touches, and I can guarantee you in most leagues he's not available. For me, he's a priority ad. I'd still go with Kyren, but I would want to be getting Zack Moss right now, just given the injury to Hull, even if it's not long-term. We know Funk's not going to do anything, and we know that Deion Jackson did not look good this last week. Another backup you can look at is Tyjae Spears. Less of an immediate impact than I think Moss can have, but he played the passing downs for the Titans. He out-snapped Derrick Henry in a game the Titans lost by 1. I think that's the big thing. It's like the Titans didn't lose by 30. This wasn't like Derrick Henry got all the snaps and then it was a blowout and then they used Tyjae Spears. Like, they were mixing him in. This is not to say that Derrick Henry isn't going to be good this season. I mean, he had 119 yards and 17 touches. Like, they're still going to get Derrick Henry his touches. It's just not going to be like 30 touches a game. They're going to mix Tyjae Spears in. He's going to get snaps. You can't use Tyjae Spears right now, obviously, but it speaks more to like their level of trust in him. If they are willing to have him get more touches than Derrick Henry in a close game, it means that if Derrick Henry goes down, he's going to be a stud. He's going to get a ton of touches. They fully trust him. He needs to be rostered 100% of leagues. You don't need to spend a high claim on him, but maybe just given that he didn't get that many touches in the game and we know the role is there now, maybe someone you add after claims and kind of like, take a shot on it and say, okay, hopefully someone doesn't put in a claim in for him. Hopefully someone doesn't use a ton of fab and I can get him in the ads. Joshua Kelley, very, very similar, but I think you run more of a risk that someone's going to claim Kelley, someone's going to put more fab in for him. I drafted Kelley on the team that I had Austin Eckler. I was basically like, I invested heavily in Eckler and Pollard. I kind of abandoned running back for a little bit in the middle rounds, and so I was like, well, I want to just secure that first pick. If Eckler goes down, I'll just throw Kelley into that spot. Just a safety sort of thing instead of taking someone else's handcuff. But honestly, he should have been rostered in more leagues. Like, I should have probably had him a little bit higher in the rankings. Because look at the touches, look at the snaps. I mean, one thing I want to point out is I'm going to show how it was very, very close. There were so many plays, right? I mean, they ran a billion offensive plays. The Chargers are not going to run 80 plays per game. And so when that's lower, you're going to see the split a little bit wider between Eckler and Kelley. But Kelley still played 38 snaps to Eckler's 41. It was a close game. It was very back and forth, so this wasn't a blowout, kind of like I said with the Titans. Kelley still ran 17 pass routes to Eckler's 24. They both had 16 carries. Eckler's still better, right? He's better on the ground. He commanded 5 targets on those 24 routes. Kelley only had 1 target on his 17. So you're not going to see the same production, and you're not going to see a touchdown every week from Kelley, and you're not going to see 80 plays per game. But the point is, he's going to see usage. He's maybe someone you can mix in weeks you think they're going to win. He's going to get usage in those weeks. But if Eckler got injured, it's like with Spears. If you have that injury, we know who the backup is. We know the production will be there. We know they'll be great in fantasy, so they have to be rostered. Kenneth Gainwell up next. Likely rostered in a lot of leagues, but if he's not, definitely worth going after. Played 41 snaps. We had DeAndre Swift play only 19. Boston Scott played 8. We had Penny, a healthy scratch. Touches went 18 for Gainwell, 3 for Swift, 2 for Boston Scott. I do not want people to overreact here. I truly believe that the Eagles will use DeAndre Swift more. I truly believe that some weeks Penny will be active. But for the time being, if this is the usage we should expect, then Gainwell obviously has upside if he's getting that many touches in this offense. Especially, they're not going to play the Patriots every week. Like, they had a bad game because it was, raining a bunch, so it was a tough spot. But it was in New England in week 1. Like, that's a terrible place to play. The Eagles are going to be fine. They're going to score over 30 points a lot of weeks. Their lead back's going to be very, very fantasy relevant. If this is the usage we can see in the short term even, he's worth rostering. Just don't overreact. Don't think that he's some amazing ad, because I don't think this usage will stick all season. Switching to tight ends, because I know, tight end's a tough spot. Many people drafted tight ends that didn't do that well, but there are actually a lot of options that are available in a lot of leagues. Not amazing options. No one that's going to compete with like Andrews and Kelsey when they're actually healthy, compete with the Hawkinsons of the world, things like that. But some decent options. So one, I want to say, don't panic on Chig Okonkwo. Definitely, if someone drops him and like you double dipped late and one of them busted, I think it's worth picking up Chig Okonkwo. The usage was there. The snaps were there. It was just, if you look at the matchup, it was terrible. I have a new matchups column on the rankings. So like right next to a player's ranking, you're going to see matchup. Red is bad. Green is good. For those of you who are a little confused by it, I have a whole write-up on it. But the point is, if you just sorted by bad matchups for tight ends, you would see Chig Okonkwo at the top. It was a horrific matchup for tight ends. We weren't expecting a ton of production. Plus, Tannehill missed him when he was wide open on I don't know how far it was, maybe like a 40 or a 50-yard touchdown. He catches that. His production looks a little bit better. He played 95% of the offensive snaps. He's going to have good games. It was just a really bad matchup. Played a ton of snaps, going to have usage this season. He's a good tight end ad. Just had a down week in a bad matchup and got missed on a deep ball. So if you're desperate for tight end kind of later, you double dipped and one of them didn't work out or both of them didn't work out, someone drops Chig, go after him. Another tight end option is, unfortunately, Zach Ertz, because I want Trey McBride to be a thing, but Ertz played more than twice as many snaps as McBride, and this is coming off of a major injury, not playing in the preseason, not getting many practice snaps, comes right in, and Zach Ertz just has this sort of usage. Led the team with 9 targets. It's gonna be a terrible team, but that means he's gonna have to throw the ball a lot in second halves. Any tight end commanding 9 targets in a week where we were wondering if he'd be limited with injury, Zach Ertz just needs to be rostered everywhere. Logan Thomas as well, another one, because I think Cole Turner is better, but Cole Turner played 10 snaps to Logan Thomas's 58. Logan Thomas tied with Jahan Dotson for the team lead with 7 targets. He's someone you can look at as well. So some of these older injured tight ends that, let's be honest, Logan Thomas, Zach Ertz, probably not going to finish the season healthy, probably going to miss some time. But if they're going to be commanding 7 to 9 targets, then we need to be looking at them in fantasy. One that I'm more excited about is Luke Musgrave. Played 8 more snaps than any other Packers skill player, was the clear receiving tight end, even in week 1 as a rookie. So very, very strong role there. Would have had a touchdown. If you watch that play, I don't know how he didn't score. He falls down when he's wide open, walking backwards, super slow to get up, and then gets tackled down again. Should have had a touchdown game, but still very good usage, good amount of air yards. He's going to have a very good role. Obviously, when you have a healthy Dobbs playing full snaps, when you got Christian Watson coming back, they're taking a lot more targets. But Musgrave's going to be the receiving tight end on this team. He's going to be good. He's a quality, high-end tight end too. A potential ad I just want to throw out there is Irv Smith. If you can't get any of them, which you definitely can, so you probably don't need to get Irv Smith. But one I just want to keep an eye on, really, because he had a 20% target share, and you're oh, if he had a 20% target share, you told me that going into the week, I'd have been was he a top 5 tight end? No, I mean, the Bengals were horrific, but it was a divisional opponent. It was pouring rain. Burrow missed most of camp with an injury. And so looking back, we probably should have predicted not this, right? Not that horrible of a performance from the Bengals, but not a good game, right? So Bengals are going to bounce back. All of their players are buy low candidates, in my opinion. And also watching Irv Smith, I didn't think he looked very good. I thought he looked kind of slow, not so great, getting more dump offs than anything. But they talked about how they're going to use him a little bit downfield. Maybe that'll develop into the season. But the fact is, like, if he had a 20% target share on the Bengals, if that holds, he's a stud. More a situation to monitor, though. He didn't play that great. There are other tight ends to go after, so keep an eye on him. I don't think you need to be adding him unless it's more of a deeper format. And if it's a deeper format, he probably already is rostered. Just going over those two names again that I talked about before, Allgeier, Nico Collins, probably rostered in most formats, but I had to mention them because if they're not, yes, definitely add them. Allgeier, usage is going to drop, obviously, with Bijan getting more touches, right? I mean, Bijan's going to be used more and more as the season goes along, but, Atlanta is going to run the ball a ton. They're going to win games this season because they are a decent team and they have a very, very easy schedule. They have a top 3 run blocking offensive line. Like, Allgeier is going to see usage, and it's the same thing where it's like, if Bijan went down, Allgeier is probably a top 10 running back. He's not going to score 2 touchdowns every week. A lot of those are going to go to Bijan, but he needs to be rostered. And then Nico Collins, 11 targets on a Texans offense that threw the ball a lot more in the game was like early on. Like they were pretty pass heavy. If they're going to stay this pass heavy, CJ Stroud's going to develop as the season goes along. Nico's going to be probably their number 1 wide receiver. 11 targets this week. Good downfield usage. He's someone that needs to be rostered, but again, he probably already was rostered. So those are top options at skill players this week. I'll add in quarterback and defense streaming option to like a pin comment at the bottom of this video. And then again, on my website, I order everything top to bottom, but I kind of went over my general order in this one as well. Wednesday, we're going to end up doing the trade targets video. Thursday will probably be the start sit video. And then either Friday or Saturday is going to be the underdog pick'em video. That, my friends, is in this one. Hope you all enjoy. If you did, how about hitting the like button and how about subscribing to the channel if you're new here? Thanks for watching.